Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Bonsai Time Podcast. In today's episode, our own Kevin Ferris interviews Will Baddeley, the renowned Deadwood carver. We recorded this interview earlier this year when Will was traveling through the US and he stopped in Columbus, Ohio for a workshop with Rob Hoffman at UMAN Bonsai. Speaking of, your local club or bonsai nursery can book Will for his next 2023 tour in the US by contacting Rob Hoffman, as he is helping to arrange this for Will. Okay, back to today's interview. So Kevin and Will discuss Will's start as a bonsai artist and as a Deadwood carver, as well as his life now as a bonsai professional and where Will looks to for inspiration. Have a listen and enjoy.
Interview, and it was not turned on.
I was up to Indiana to a workshop with Mark.
A 3-hour interview.
You learn by your mistakes.
I think that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, we're still here, so
Okay.
at least he caught it so quickly this time. You know?
Right.
Good job.
Right.
Okay. My name's Will Baddeley from the United Kingdom. I'm over in the States for a couple of months, and presently we're in Ohio having a wonderful weekend in wonderful weather, good company, and good trees. So
You were saying about your history.
yes,
As the guidelines were record and don't not.
yeah.
forward.
So I didn't really have an interest in gardening until I got my first house with my wife. I started off with a little greenhouse, a few cacti. On the way back from work one day, I stopped in at a fuel station, and there were a few sarissas on the counter. I think it was $10.99, something like that, and that was the start. I managed to kill it quite quickly, but in the meantime I bought a book by Colin Lewis that it was more native based and collecting elms and stuff like that. So I got out there almost straight away. My job at the time, I was thatching, lots of hedges, lots of land that I had access to, and so I started digging up elms, which is my favourite species, and went on from there really, and never looked back. And my passion for bonsai has just grown and grown and grown from there really.
Nice.
I got into carving through the type of material we collect around where I am. We haven't got the mountains, we haven't got the Yamadori, and it's taller trees with a good root base and a bit of movement, but trunk chops, so you have to deal with the trunk chops. So that's where the machine carving came in. There aren't many people that put the level of detail into the work that I kind of do, and that I think stems from my model making when I was from as long as I can remember, building Second World War models, Spitfires and all the aeroplanes, and that the level of detail that you get in when you're doing that kind of work is kind of follow through with the carving.
So within that time frame of getting into trees to carving, were you traveling with the bonsai before that, and then got into carving to travel later?
No. The carving kind of developed over several years, but it was just doing it on my own. There was the internet was barely around when I started, and it was most of my work has come through the internet. I started off on the Internet Bonsai Club. This was back in 2000. It might have been 1999 actually, 2000, roughly that time.
That's like the infancy of forums.
Yeah. People started appreciating my work. I got a few workshops. There's a guy in Belgium called Yannick Kigan. I think he was the first workshop I did abroad, and Pavel Slovak in the Czech Republic, and I kind of did those during my holiday periods. My wife would allow me to take a week off work and and travel a bit. And it kind of went from there. I was thatching at the time, and I kind of got bored with the thatching a bit. You're working on your own. It's quite a lonely job, and I was looking for something else, and I went into the probation service and started working in hostels where we deal with prisoners on release, high-risk prisoners on release.
So it's like a halfway house that could be.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they would come in with license conditions, drug and alcohol testing, stuff like that, and we'd do group work with them. So I started. I thought about bonsai as a healing tool, which it's proved on many occasions to be a very, very good spiritual kind of. It kind of absorbs. It's very absorbing. You can kind of forget all your problems. It's a very therapeutic hobby, and it worked really well with the prisoners.
Is that still continuing? Do you know? Or
No, I
did it stop
don't. I
with
don't
you?
think so. It stopped.
okay.
It stopped with me, but I've lost my thread. It was trying to think. Yeah, I ended up getting divorced, bought a house, lost my job
With the probation.
with the probation service. They decided to privatise it,
Oh yeah.
and a certain amount of us lost our jobs. And I didn't really want to go back to thatching because it's I'm getting older. My knees aren't what they used to be. My hips. I've had operations on my wrists. And a good friend of mine, Kevin Wilson, who's also a carver, saw the potential in what I can do and suggested I do this as a profession.
What year was that?
That was 2015.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
too long ago.
So now that you've been a professional bonsai artist for that long, I know you were just talking about how bonsai in the past has been kind of therapeutic for you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that being a professional bonsai artist is a less stressful job full-time than your previous jobs?
No, I would say having to making sure you've got a full. Yeah, I don't know. Would I say I enjoy it as much? I think I do. But there's a difference when you have to do it as opposed to when you want to do it.
And you got
You know?
to eat.
Yeah.
Do you think it goes along the lines of, piggyback on Ryan's question, like people have this idea of what it would be like to be a professional bonsai artist, or like a skateboarder? Professional skateboarder's gonna be great.
Yeah.
But when like you said, the time comes to crunch down.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to do it today, but I have to.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There's an element of that. It's not. I mean, I still love it, so it's not that difficult.
Right, it's not draining.
Yeah.
Within your time through workshops and teaching and whatnot, what's the best way that you found to break through the new person barrier, or the barrier that all these new people have? Like, what should I work on as far as the first tree, or what is good material to even have in my, where you're at in the UK? If a new person came up to you today, from your experience, like I was saying, within workshops and teaching, how do you go about telling them what and where to look for, what to work on, or what to do?
Well, I mean, there's
Or like in Ohio.
there's so many levels, isn't there? Whether someone is working on stuff they've dug up that's not particularly good quality trees, or whether it's top end Yamadori, as long as people are getting the same kind of buzz out of it, that's the most important thing. So I don't push for people to be buying the best material they can. Is what pleases them is really whether it's indoor trees or outdoor trees. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. So I'm not pushy. I don't push. I sell a little bit of material, but that's not really my goal.
Right.
That side of it.
If I could follow up a little bit, so also on getting new people into the hobby, when you have someone come to a workshop, they've never picked up a die grinder or a Dremel before, but they're at your workshop, so they're obviously interested in carving at that point.
Yeah.
How do you help them get over that initial, I guess, almost fear of the machine and fear of the fact that some of the wood that you take away you can't put back? Unlike when you're growing a branch, you can cut it and it can grow back. But
there are a lot of mistakes you can make that are fixable. Sometimes they're not, but just keeping it. If I see that someone's nervous and needs more help than someone else, then they'll get more help than someone else. You can gauge that quite quickly, I think.
Yeah.
Shaking. That's not the machine shaking.
Yeah, and I often, if they kind of look at me like a rabbit in the headlights, then I'll show them first. Some people will just pick up a tool straight away and get stuck in, which can be a little bit alarming as well. if I'm not quite, round to them yet, sometimes people can get a bit ahead of themselves and do something that I maybe didn't explain properly, or they didn't listen properly.
Usually the latter.
Yeah.
Well, and I noticed yesterday in the workshop you did draw with Sharpie like an area for Kevin to carve, like that kind of thing. So
we can simplify it and or use a whiteboard, and sometimes that helps to explain things a bit better.
Gotcha.
But it's gaining confidence with the tools, knowing which ones do which job is what the workshops are for. You're not necessarily going to create the kind of carving that I do straight away, but it's just a guide, and the principles to the work that I do are quite basic, but very, very time consuming and detailed.
Yeah.
So it looks complicated, but it's not really. There's quite a simple process to the whole lot, really.
Right. Well, and that, time and consideration to the craft and the art, and just understanding of how wood works, like you were saying today. Following the grain, but on Greenwood, like we worked with mine, or today you worked with that beach.
Absolutely.
Where's the line? Well, I don't know. Wait 2 years, you'll find it a little bit. What was your first experience like traveling outside of the UK? I'd always like to know this, because were you scared, like rock star stage fright?
I would say I get a little bit anxious every time.
That still goes on.
Yeah.
How do you counteract that?
I would say I'm quite shy, but I push myself.
Jump right in.
Yeah. I've always been good at that. Yeah.
It's funny because I didn't pick up.
Yeah,
on that
I would say a little bit introverted. But yeah, I push myself. Initially, when I first did club talks, I used to get really, really anxious. I wouldn't be able to eat before. It gets easier the more you do it.
Right.
That's for sure.
And
I can eat. And,
right.
I do get nervous. Before I came out of here, I think, you're meeting new people. You don't know how it's going to be. So, like coming here, but it's fine. Robert's a good man. You're all nice people, and it's very easy to get on with. Good material. You're thinking about the work that you're doing. It's good to see.
Right.
Yeah.
We're definitely happy to have you.
Thank you.
Within your time in bonsai, what has been the biggest thing you've taken away from your experiences, as far as like not life changing, but what have you learned more about yourself just within the practice?
That if you push yourself, you can achieve the things that you want to do. But it's a struggle sometimes, and you have to push.
That's the thing. We're both in school. We're both trying to do something future tense of bonsai relation. I know myself. I wanted to nursery, idea and whatnot. And then Ryan has ideas, as you were saying with me the other day, of wanting to teach and do things that way. Within the realm of trees and professionally, I've heard it's kind of dog eat dog. Does that still hold true, or is it changing as you see?
Well, with the line of work I'm in, I'm not really competing with many people. You know, right. I can work with several artists that don't get on with each other really. I don't discuss, you know, all the infighting that goes on amongst other artists. I don't really get involved in all that.
Right.
I see it happening, but you know, my job isn't competing with. You know, most people out there are stylists, so my carving work doesn't really interfere with any of that. So it's quite a fortunate position to be in, really.
Yeah.
You know, my piece of the pie is what's the word? Constant. You know?
You have your own market, right? I mean,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
set your own path.
I mean, you know, hopefully someone else will come in and you know, pick up some of the work that I do and carry it forward. You know, maybe one of you guys one day will be good enough to carve and teach in America. That'd be lovely.
Yeah,
I'd like that.
That was the thing I was pushing for, just because, you know, like we talked yesterday. I'm from Oregon. You know, I've done my time out there with all the things. Ryan studied out in Washington State, right above Oregon. So having that kind of bubble with all this access.
Oh yeah.
And you know, if it wasn't for Rob having this nursery now, because we're at UMN right now, you know, it was a desert.
Yeah.
you know, a very dry mirage everywhere desert.
Yeah.
It's like, is that a tree? No, that's just the hill.
Yeah.
You know, and what I was talking with these three, Rob and Ryan, was like, you know, going forward, we can hold things for the club now too.
Yeah.
Just in the basics.
Absolutely.
We barely broke through the ice, if you will. But Ryan and I have discussed a lot of carving just even before, like, well, how do you think you do this? How do you do that? And just what you told us, just in our own little bits of working on our own trees, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You just need a little snippet to get you going, and you can carry that forward and, you know, develop your own style.
Right.
You know.
Right. As you know, the theory and thought of bonsai is to create a tree that looks like something from nature, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's climate's different, like you're saying, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, temperate in Oregon, temperate, but here is you get high winds and, you know, in the Cleveland area, and then some crazy tornadoes in Cincinnati. You know?
Yeah.
And so you get some really interesting stuff. As far as the gear that you use, how did you wind up just finding that gear? Is that just accessible?
Just a trial and error.
Okay.
I have buckets and buckets of tools at home that I never use. You know,
right.
that I've bought and tried once and they get slung in the corner and never seen again. They're just gathering dust. But yeah, they're even in that toolbox over there. You know, there's too many tools. I mean, obviously, I have spares that I can loan out to people if they need to borrow them. But you know, there tend to be. There's probably 10 tools that I use the most, all the time. You know, and the rest of it is kind of extras, or you know, don't get used very often for really specific tasks.
Going along the lines of having too many tools for people to use in workshops, along with this idea of traveling. Do you remember your first time coming to the States?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts of the people you're going to be with? Did you know them at all, or did you have an idea?
No, I didn't know. I knew them from online, chatting online. The likes of Robert Presler and Mike Andrew Humphreys. They were the main two that kind of got me over here, really. I started off, my first venture was MABS. Was it 6 years ago, I think?
Was that your first time to the States?
Yeah.
Altogether?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big intro. First time here, and then, hey, welcome to the world of American bonsai.
And it was good. That was, you know, it was good material, because I'd heard that the material might not be up to, you know, what you're used to working on, but it was good. And I found the people very warm. You know, I don't think I've met anyone so far, and I'll touch wood. Although that's plastic.
Here you go. There's trees all around here.
Yeah, I haven't come across anyone that's you know, either rubbed me up the wrong way or I wouldn't work for again. You know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling, I'm sure, just because I've heard some people's stories. Like, you did what? They said what to you? Oh my, no. with your experience, East Coast, West Coast, this is your first time in the Midwest, right? Or
It's the first time in
Rust Belt,
Ohio.
I guess,
Yeah.
Rust Belt, Midwest, you don't get them confused, I've heard. And I know. What are your things you picked up just on cultural, as far as the influence of trees or how people interact with their trees from East to West Coast and Midwest now? Is it different or is it all the same?
I would say it's more or less the same.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Yamadori seems to be the strongest part of what's going on now. It seems that with the rise of Bjorn and Ryan and Randy Knight, it's an explosion of good quality, really top quality trees. I know I'm probably there's probably people swearing at me now saying, I've been doing this for years, and but it seems from the outside looking in, it seems that that the Japanese apprentices coming back was a real boom, and you have so many. You're so lucky over here to have so many really good top artists.
Like we were discussing yesterday about Oregon, there's at least 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Either classically trained or American classically with the Japanese approach training apprentices in that little area.
But it's almost to the point where you don't really need to go to Japan anymore.
That's what I've been told too.
To serve an apprenticeship. Michael Hagedorn's doing an excellent job.
Bjorn's got just finished his first one.
Yeah. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I would argue that some of the material that you get is some of the best in the world.
Yeah,
it's stunning.
It's a landscape out here. It's so big.
Yeah.
And I told you my wife and I drove her across the country. She'd never done that, being from Japan.
Yeah.
And it was like a kid in a candy store with a face on the window the whole way down. I was like, oh my God, look at that, it's so different. Got to Wyoming, we stopped out because it's so, you've been to Wyoming, right?
No.
If you have a chance, you should check out Wyoming. It's beautiful. Just watch out for the high winds because it will flip a semi-truck over.
Oh, really?
Oh, it will. Crazy. But the views you see are something completely different. And you can just see for miles. And we watched the sun go down. She started crying. She's this is the most beautiful thing. I'm like, what about me? Like, shut up. But where are some spots that you would like to go teach in the United States?
That I haven't been.
Or that you haven't been yet?
I haven't been up to. I'd like to go to Dan Robinson's. I'd like to see Ellender Gardens. That would be fantastic. I'm not sure really. I don't know enough about America. America and the different states. All the states that I've been to. I try. A day off here and there is nice for me to get a bit of the culture. Go out up into the mountains. Like the other day, Mike Andrew Humphreys took me up into the Catskills. We did some trout fishing.
That looked fun. Yeah, I saw that.
By the cabin. Oh, it was fantastic. I love days like that.
Little nature therapy.
They make it so worthwhile.
No doubt. You all get to eat.
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of a holiday.
You have to. I mean,
otherwise it's just a workshop with a different accent.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It goes with anything in life, right?
Yeah.
Too much of one thing, it's just like I'm already drained out.
Yeah.
And you're going to do this for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then you have how many more places to go now?
I'll be going to Chicago, New England, Dallas, Houston, Austin. I'll probably miss some out. Chris Springer, he's up in
Maine. Where's it, Maine?
Maine, yeah.
You're going to try to see Colin Lewis when you go up there?
No, I don't think I'll be able to. I don't think I've got time. But I've been to see him a couple of times in the past, and I always enjoy his company. And he was one of my main influences, when I was starting out, and still is. He's very influential.
Yeah, I remember my first book. Like I saw a tree. The listeners on here have heard my story. Got into it. Real quick thing was like I saw a tree when I was on lunch break from my massage therapy work I was doing back in Portland. Saw a little gold Hinoki cypress and a kind of palm style Hinoki cypress. I'm like, I'm gonna buy those. Brought them home. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to do bonsai. She's like, you don't know about it? I'm like, nope. But I know what it is. She's like, okay. And I went to the local bookstore in Portland, Palace Books, really famous one. And I got the Bonsai 101.
Yes.
I read that on the bus pretty much all the way through. I was like, oh, wow, okay, cool. And the next 2 months, every weekend I was at the nursery just checking the material. Of course, like everybody, when they're starting out, they buy $10 pieces, or 15, and when you could have bought one $100 piece and probably gotten a better education on it.
Yeah.
But as far as that, when you do travel, whether it's U.S. or anywhere in the world, what do you take from those? As far as, does it change your styling of trees sometimes based on the allocation of climate or geography?
Yeah, it does. A few years back, I was in California with Robert Presler, and he said, we've got a few days off. Do you fancy doing a road trip? And I said, well, where are you thinking of? And we went to the White Mountains to see the bristlecones.
I have not been there. I want to get there.
We went to see the giant redwoods. Went to Monterey to see the cypress. And we went somewhere else. I can't remember. But it was basically 3 days. We did 2,100 miles.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Could've
But
driven almost half the country.
it was like tick, tick, tick on my bucket list.
Oh, yeah.
It was fantastic. And looking at some of the Deadwood there, that influenced me. That changed my carving.
I would hope so, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the pictures, those are some of the oldest trees in the world.
Yeah. Stunning.
In my class, my horticulture class, my teacher brought it up in one of the slides early on. I was like, holy wow. That sounds like, raised my hand and like, oh, what do you know about this? I'm like, I'm a tiny tree guy, so that's like the god of tree.
But you can recognize Deadwood similarities in some species, like the cypress, the Monterey, very much like a Tosho type juniper, very stabby, jabby, kind of Deadwood, and completely
like it wants to hurt you.
completely different to some of the other Deadwoods. There's just unique, and hugely. I love it. I love seeing other Deadwood. Most of the Deadwood in the UK tends to be wet rot as opposed to the high mountain stuff. So completely different effect.
I do want to get to the UK someday just to see some of the old growth forests, because those sound beautiful to see. Just the majesticness of them. You know? Do you spend a lot of time when you're not working in those kind of forests?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm fortunate. About 20 minutes from where I live is a wood that it's full of oak and holly, a few birch. But they've been there for, I think it's 500 years.
Wow.
And I think it's the largest ancient woodland in Europe. It's oaks with huge limbs that tumble down, hit the ground. It used to be worked. It used to be farmed, so the branches would have been pollarded, cut off, and used for house building, shipbuilding, that kind of thing.
So it was milled wood then, taken to the mill and cut down.
But often branches were grown in a particular shape for, say, the keel of a boat. So they would choose timbers that were shaped so the grain works in the right way. But obviously they got neglected, so the trees then have these odd-looking limbs that get a bit too heavy and they'll break off, and that starts to create the deadwood. I mean, most ancient deciduous trees in the UK have deadwood on.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I like deciduous trees with deadwood because it tells a story.
Yeah.
I guess I get that from Dan. Like I was saying, Ryan and I went up there. He was up there. That's his old teacher, and I was graciously given an opportunity to go. And how did you hear about Dan Robinson?
Pardon? How did I hear about him? Through books, through the the Internet Bonsai Club and social media. And I read his book. Graham Potter also told me that Graham Potter's he was heavily influenced by Dan Robinson. I think he came over to a show. I can't remember where it was. Dan Robinson was there in the UK.
Did he have the
I
chainsaw?
didn't get a chance to see it, but I saw
gotcha.
some photographs of the work that he did.
Did he have the chainsaw with him?
I can't remember.
Gotcha.
I can't remember. Is that his usual
that
trick?
was
Is it?
that was the thing he told us that he liked to do. I don't know if it's necessarily for just like the wow factor, but also just like that's pretty cool.
Well, I use a chainsaw. I've got one of those carving. Where people take a tree and they carve an animal into it. They use these really short, pointy saw blades, and they're very useful for big stuff, obviously.
Right.
But just to speed the process up, if you want to open a tree up and get in there with the chainsaw first, just knock the middle out of it, and then start to refine it.
That makes sense. You're cutting time in half.
Yeah.
With your everyday, bonsai practice outside of traveling, what keeps you going? How do you find like we're talking about, it's different from being not a hobby or just a lifestyle choice. It's now your full-time income, moneymaker, bread. You got a bread and butter right there.
Yeah.
What gets you up? What keeps you on? How do you do it?
Well, I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but I go to bed thinking about trees, and I wake up thinking about trees. So it's that kind of level. So it's at peaks and troughs. Sometimes I might just water my trees for a few weeks, and not be particularly interested in doing anything to them, and then all of a sudden I'll just be on them. It varies really. When I've done 2 months of carving, it might be a while before I pick up a Dremel again, But I really enjoy the styling side of it, which is completely different to the noise. That constant whining of a machine, and I find that a lot more peaceful than. I love styling my deciduous work. Yeah. And the majority of my trees are deciduous.
They are.
Yeah.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I heard you say you don't carve your own trees much, or
Yeah, I think people assume
take,
that I've got a garden full of carved trees, and I haven't. I maybe have 3 or 4.
you just don't want to do what you do for work all the time on your own? Or
No, it's just appropriate. Whether it's appropriate for the tree. Some of them are already naturally hollow and don't need anything doing to them. So I just leave well alone. But yeah, so knowing what carving for carving's sake is not what I'm about.
Yeah.
If someone if they've got a couple of trees and they bring them into a workshop and I recognise one of them shouldn't be carved, then I'll make it plain. I don't really think it should be carved, and hopefully they'll take me up on that. If they want to go ahead and carve it, then fine.
Yeah, I mean they're trees.
Yeah, it's their choice.
You weren't classically trained, were you? Or were you self-taught? Or
Self-taught.
So, with self-taught, what barriers did you come up against that you realized you could have, that you now figured out to help people through? Does that make sense? As far as
How do you mean?
so like when you're starting out self-taught, like trying to learn guitar by yourself, right?
Yeah.
There's certain levels where you kind of just even out.
Well, I'm a good visual learner.
Okay.
So I can watch someone doing a demonstration and see the technique that you're using and apply it pretty well. I mean, experience. You do break branches when you're bending. You've got to. Experience counts for a lot of what I do. Yeah.
I know it's a question. I ask some questions sometimes. We're like, dang, it's a hard question.
Yeah, it is.
But I generally just ask them too to see, as far as reflection pieces, because you've had a lot of time in your reflection as I'm sure you do reflect on it, but in certain ways, I'm not a professional. I don't travel yet. I hope to someday,
Yeah.
But in regards to, I hope that I can reflect on where I can move to help someone through something that I already went through, and just knowing that I can see it in them that they're going to have a problem either working on a tree or carving, like you said.
Yeah, well, I still advocate you have to go through. You still have to go through the basics and make the mistakes to learn properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to kill trees.
Was it?
Personally,
Yeah.
you have to realise, hearing it from someone else isn't good enough.
It sucks when you lose them. I lost
Yeah,
two this year,
yeah.
this winter, I don't know what happened. Just
Yeah,
didn't wake up.
we all lose them. We all lose them, but it is the best way to learn.
Yeah, I usually just
as long as you know, as long as you can understand the reason,
right,
why it's died. Sometimes you don't know.
I think for me it's Ohio weather.
Yeah.
The cold and the heat.
Yeah, well, we're so lucky in the UK that we have the Gulf Stream and surrounded by water, so we kind of have a more even temperature.
Right.
We don't have the hot summers. We might get a few days of 100, but it's not often. And if it gets to -10, that's a bad winter, and that'll be for a few days.
Right.
Most of the time it's hovering just below freezing, or maybe in the 20s generally throughout the year.
So a proper winter.
Yeah.
Livable.
Yeah, yeah. But we're nowhere near the extremes of temperatures. I mean, look at the temperatures we've had here over the weekend. It's been it was pretty cold.
Last year it was snowing on my birthday because,
yeah.
Yesterday it was snowing. I was like, oh, cool.
Was that up in the 80s? 88, wasn't it? Something
almost 90.
Yeah.
And this Wednesday
Crazy.
we're going to be down to freezing.
Yeah. Mad. But yeah, moving trees, all my trees live outdoors all year round. Unless I've repotted them, then I'll give them protection.
You just put them on the ground.
But otherwise, they're just out there doing their own thing.
Right. With your garden design, I've never seen what your place looks like or in pictures or anything. Do you have a design for your own garden, or is it kind of...
No, not really. I need to do a lot of work in my garden. It's looking pretty shabby. All my trees are up on benches or on something, but it's a bit mishmash. I would like to spend some money and get it done properly, really.
Right.
But it's having the time, and I'd rather work on the trees than work on the garden around it.
Else do pay for it. Do you have an idea of what you want your place to look like as far as your spot? Like, you want it like Asian influenced, or a proper UK, English garden, or?
No, just nice and tidy, really.
Okay. Gotcha.
No, I'm not really. I like to look at Japanese gardens, but I quite like an English garden.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I mean, my garden is very steep for Suffolk, which is known for being, as flat as a pancake. My garden is. If I go halfway up my garden, I can see over the top of my roof, which is a 2-story house.
Wow.
It's pretty steep, but it's terraced. But the bottom third is used. The next 2/3 are kind of wild.
Okay.
It's grass and weeds, and the rest is trees.
Okay.
And it seems like everyone's got the same idea. They'll walk up a little way and then get a bit puffed out and don't go any further. So the whole, all the gardens across the back are all tall trees, which is nice because you get foxes and you get the owls and all that kind of thing. It's like a nature corridor, which I like.
That's interesting. Just from out here, being a landscaper and all, just having that different idea of culturally too, probably, right? Just how it's constructed.
But I like wildflowers, so I don't cut my grass. I like the wildflowers to come through. I want to see the bees. I have lots of bees, lots of bumblebees, we call them, solitary bees.
Yeah.
And I've little. They're quite rare. It's a legless lizard called a slow worm, and I have those all over the place. They don't eat enough of my snails and slugs, though. But they could do a bit better at that.
Gotcha.
But yeah. No, I've got some nice creatures visiting my garden.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
nice. With you being on all the time for bonsai carving, what have you, within the realm of that niche, hobby for some, profession for others. What do you do outside of that? What do you find yourself leisurely doing?
Films. I like films. I wouldn't say I've thought about getting into model making again as a little break from.
Right.
I mean, it's still just as intense, but I've thought about getting back into model making.
When you say model making, you're not talking about like snap together plastic models. You're talking about like fine detail building.
Yeah, well, they are plastic kits. I'll give you that. But it's the painting and the effects. It's a bit like the detail carving is taking it to that.
The minute.
Yeah.
The minute details.
I love all that.
I
I do wish my eyes were a bit better though. They're getting worse as I get older. So I'll have to get some big lenses so that I can.
One of those big magnifying glasses.
Yeah.
You are 95 now.
All right. So they did sing "Happy Birthday." Huh?
Yeah.
Oh my.
That was funny. That was funny.
You just snuck it in like a rabbit out of a hat, huh? Oh man, that's funny. For those of you that didn't know on this podcast, we're sitting with Rob, who's the owner of Yume Inn, and Will Baddeley, of course. And they went to dinner right before this podcast, and Rob told me, he was laughing and said, "Oh, I played a joke on Will. I said it was his birthday, and I said he was 95. And then all the staff came out and said, 'We have a 95-year-old in the restaurant.' And then they sang 'Happy Birthday' to this supposed 95-year-old man."
Yeah.
That had to be quite a feeling. Being like, "Oh, that's a reality check."
Yeah. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I've got a year to think about this before I come back with something. I'll get you. I'll get you.
The UK life is a lot of solitude.
I'll be 96 then.
With so before thatching, as I know we discussed that with the proper traditional methods of roof building and things similar to what you'd like find in Japan or other I don't want to say indigenous realms of house building and things, but that traditional essence. What were you doing before that? How did you find that, or what was your life before?
Before I was thatching, I was at school. I did it. When I left school, there wasn't a great deal of work around. I think it was 1 in 10 was the number for unemployment at that time.
Was that with Thatcher, or was that with Margaret Thatcher being in tow?
Yeah. There was a government program called the Youth Opportunities Program. And my mum kicked me out of bed one day and said, "Get down the Youth Opportunities Program office." And I walked in there and they said, I had long hair at the time and I was a bit of a hippie. And they said, "You look like you want to be a Thatcher." And so that was I kind of fell into it, really.
Okay.
I left schools not particularly well qualified for anything. No particular idea of what I wanted to do. I've always been good with my hands, but I still had no idea. So it was kind of lucky. It was luck more than anything that got me into the thatching.
So you fell into thatching, and then you went into the probationary, not business but work field. What made you think of bringing bonsai? Like, as you know, I know, as you said, hey, what if we try this? What was the inclination to even think about what if we do try this? What's going to be the reaction of the people in this program for the kind of halfway house guys living there, right? Mm-hmm. And my question was like, what even started the process of you thinking of bringing a tree into having them work on or do it?
It was my boss at the probation service was looking for different avenues to for group work. I mean, they used to do cooking, also just basic stuff for life outside of prison, really.
Right.
But I made a suggestion one day because I know that other people have used it as a form of therapy. So I suggested it, and she took me up on it, and it was very successful.
How long did you run that program with the trees for?
I think it was 6 months before I was laid off.
Oh,
yeah, it was.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Have you considered trying to? I mean, I know you're busy with all the things you're doing now, but someday bring that back into.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I love teaching.
Yeah.
I love seeing people enthused by what I do.
Right.
So I get a big buzz out of that. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to take it up again. You know, with any group.
Have you thought about or given any thought to maybe what that would look like?
No, not really. I'm just concentrating on the on this side of it for now.
Yeah, here and now.
But you know, if someone approached me with that in mind, yeah, I'd be up for that.
Nice.
Definitely.
Nice. That's because I mean, I guess with America and veterans, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
I know a lot of veterans, Vietnam or what have you.
Giving something back rather than,
right.
It can look like it's take, but it's
right. Right. With what was the other thing Ryan wanted to talk about? This is not here. He had to go pick up his girlfriend.
Phone.
Right, exactly. Right. Do you have a favorite tree or species to carve?
To carve, probably taxus and olive.
Why is that? Just because of wood?
Yeah, it's a nice hard wood. It's if it's close grained, I would say taxus above all. I think you've got a good contrast of. I love the dark green colour, the red of the bark, and then the silvery grey of the deadwood. And we have a lot of very, very old taxus in the UK because of the old pagan traditions. They used to worship the yew. Then the Christians came and built churches on the pagan sites, which preserved these yews. And we have quite a number that are kind of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years old. It's a guesstimate, but they only grow a tiny, maybe a millimetre a year, so they can roughly work out where the centre was. And
how big are these trees around? Would you say now?
Oh, you're
like
talking about
tree.
20 feet across.
Wow.
Yeah, and there might only be 4 or 5 remnants of the trunk left. The middle has gone completely, but they know it's the same tree because the genetics are all the same.
Wow, that's jaw dropping. I'm sure
it is, and to be next to something like that is very humbling, very humbling. Just like the the bristlecone pines and the giant redwoods. How humbling they are.
It hurt your neck.
It's time to be quiet when you're with those trees.
Yeah. I just had a friend that went over there for 2 weeks, and she came back, and I was like, I'm forever changed. My first time there, and I'm glad I went when I was 60, not 20. I was like, yeah. She's like, I took more in than I thought, and I started crying. I was like, I can only imagine. There's a lot of energy in that forest,
Yeah.
Throughout each time you go to a different area with forests or things, what do you feel you take from as yourself? Like, do you take positions of like, oh, this tree was that way because of that environment. Maybe I can do that back home. Or do you take, I felt this way. I want to reestablish that when I get back home. How do I do that?
Reestablish
as like a feeling you got. Like, how can I make that come home with me? As like if I was in this forest with the Bristol cones, how do I find that back home?
No, I just keep that. I just keep that for me, really.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, so like you walk into a forest and you want to recreate that forest. No, I'm not that. No, that's not for me. I keep all this stuff in there, and some of that will transfer into what I'm doing, but not to copy. If that's where you're coming from.
Not copy per se, but just the feeling you got, as far as like.
The feelings stay in more than expressing that through my trees. I don't think I do that so much.
That's it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, I get that, because they're those things that are meant for us, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make them a miniature, but like, nah, I want that to be for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That makes total sense. And I know some of my questions are off the wall, but I like to get questions to think. You know?
Yeah.
Like how did that affect me?
Yeah, so sometimes I need a little bit more time to think about things, than give it a direct answer.
And that's totally fine. And like I said, I asked these questions even with Ryan. He's like, you asked me that hard question again. I have to think about it. I'm like, yeah, but it's not meant for an immediate answer.
Yeah.
Because out of respect for your time.
Yeah.
You have to think about what it meant to you.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe that's a plain question. Try going back home.
Yeah. I'll text you the answer to that.
Hey, I'm always free. With being in the UK, seeing the bonsai, and then coming to America, all over the world, really. What countries have you been to?
I've been to New Zealand, Australia, Czech Republic, Poland, Denmark, Belgium. The States. I'd like to go to South America. I've never been to South America. Where else have I been?
Canada?
No, that's another place I'd love to go to. And I don't know much about Canadian bonsai. There's, is it Easterbrook? Is he?
David Easterbrook.
He's Canadian.
He was the curator for the Montreal Botanical Gardens since
yeah.
retired.
I'd like to
a
meet
really
him
nice
too. He sounds like an interesting
Very
guy.
nice guy. There's a good scene up there.
Yeah.
Really good scene. They have a lot of penjing too. I think Easterbrook's Montreal's more eastern side of the country, and then I think Vancouver, being on the west side, probably has a decent amount. They have a lot of international there.
Yeah, but no, that's also a big space.
Yeah. It's a very big country too.
And it wasn't until I came to the States you really realise how big it is.
Yeah.
I was staying with Robert Presler the first time I came over, and he said, "You got a day off? Where do you fancy going anywhere?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go to San Francisco." And he said, "It's an 8-hour drive."
Yeah, because he's in the Bay.
He's LA.
LA. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that kind of put it into perspective. It takes as long to drive from the very south of England to Scotland. It takes 9 hours.
Right.
So
right.
California is the same size as the whole of the UK.
That makes sense for the economy.
That blew my mind.
That's the thing I realized from moving out from Oregon, because it took me 8 hours to drive out of Oregon to the border of Idaho.
Yeah.
From Portland out, and then continuing on, and then out here now, I was like, I can drive to New York in 8 hours. Okay, that's through 4 states.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can drive 2 hours and being a huge, bigger city. 3 being Indiana. Oh, okay. I'll take almost 3.5 hours to drive to Seattle from Portland. That western expansion is a big thing.
Yeah.
It was the gold rush definitely made a bigger map compared to the colonies of New England and whatnot. That's funny you put it that way, because that time in consideration too, being my wife's from Japan, she said the same thing.
Yeah.
She's like, "This is huge." I'm like, "Yeah, and I told you, every state is like their own little country."
Yeah.
As in like, this is your first time in Ohio, right? And then the whole Rust Belt, every little pocket. You've lived here your whole life, Rob. What would you say is all different everywhere you go?
Yeah. I mean, Central Ohio is very flat. Southern Ohio is,
Hilly,
mountains.
Yeah. You go by Appalachia, right? If you ever get the opportunity to see Appalachian Mountains, I think you'd like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's only 4 hours from here. So next time you come out, got to try to get there because you can go see falling water too in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for 4 hours drive.
Yeah.
There and back. That's something. Have you ever know about the falling water from Frank Lloyd Wright?
No.
Yeah, it's a house he built.
Oh yes,
Within
yeah.
the waterfall.
Yes,
That's
beautiful, stunning.
That's otherworldly. And that I saw that last summer with my wife, and that changed my perspective on what can be done too.
Yeah.
As I know a lot of people have said that through bonsai or whatever, but that's just like everyone that goes there is like, I'm changed as a person.
Yeah.
This changed me. Oh shoot, you're leaving tomorrow, right?
Yeah, 9:00.
I
fly to New York.
If you had some extra time, I was like, we could go into Columbus because there's a neighborhood based on or around or after Frank Lloyd Wright houses.
Oh, okay.
In Worthington. It's pretty interesting stuff over there.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself being inspired by architecture, whether it be UK or other things?
Well, I'm not particularly religious, but I love a church. I can spend hours wandering around old churches, even the graveyards, reading the headstones and stuff like that. But yeah, old British. I used to work on a lot of very old houses. 1450s, 1600s, those kind of age of houses when I was thatching.
That's hard for me.
And
to
I love
out here.
And you can tell the age of a house by the type of joints that they used in the design of the house.
What kind of joints were you guys using? Or was being used?
There are all sorts of weird and wonderful names for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, a specific joint would pertain to a certain year or a certain time.
Oh, wow.
I love old timber frame houses, and the really well-to-do ones were carved. You beautiful carvings on the outside of the beams, and I love old timber
right?
frame. Yeah, they're superb.
Right.
Yeah, I miss that. I miss working on some of those old houses.
Just doing the thatching or everything?
Just the whole thing. Yeah.
It's got an energy about it, right? Its own little thing.
Yeah.
I hope to get to the UK someday, just to see that alone.
Yeah.
Being that my family, I found out from some parts of Scotland.
Yeah.
Royalty or something, bastardization of my last name. Someone got mad at someone and said, "Screw
okay.
you! I'm changing the spelling and all this and that." And my brother did a deep dive and found we have our family plaque and or crest and plaid and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna wear it.
Do you mean tartan?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
American.
Yeah, American.
Watch Braveheart too many times.
Yeah, I don't think plaid would go down very well in Scotland. If you said that.
Probably not. See, now I know. No, knowing's half the battle, right? What has your experience been in Columbus or Ohio? Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I've loved it. Yeah.
I mean, it's quite flat.
Yeah,
but
there's plenty of flat places,
True.
and that has an appeal too.
Yeah.
You tend to be able to see a lot further.
It's true.
Yeah.
Too bad we didn't get a nice thunderstorm and lightning strike. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah.
You've seen miles.
No, where I am is relatively flat, and it's got an appeal of its own.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I will say there's some
Big
really,
skies.
really cool old trees around, especially on the farms out here. I'm sure you saw coming up with Rob, just the really big old oaks and stuff.
Yeah.
And those are some of my favorites, just because they're not everywhere, and those have been here probably forever.
Yeah.
Or grown for the last 100 years more. It's just the consideration of time is so interesting every time you look at something, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a tree, like you're saying, the 3,000 or so many thousands of years taxes. I'm like, it's hard to imagine without seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've talked to Rob about this a lot, and we traveled to and fro other shows and things, and we're always trying to figure out how we can improve the scene locally, but also have it ripple effect out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the important a legacy of what you're trying to achieve.
Have you found anything that works really well for that, as far as like a local club to do or anything?
Not yet. No.
It's always on the search.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a question I ask a lot. Just because I'm like, do the experience and time you've had more than me or both of us combined, it's like, what do you know that we don't? It's interesting for the fact of the way you came about into bonsai, just from thatching to probation work to going into the
Yeah, it was that
petrol
chance
station.
thing in a fuel station. You know, if I hadn't gone to the fuel station that day, where would I be now? You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Like for me on my lunch break.
You know, from that day to ever think that I could be travelling the world,
Right.
from that one little sarissa for £10, it's just.
How was that feeling when you like, oh hey, America wants you? They've been knocking on the door. You know, what was that like? Or was that just like they want?
Yeah, it's very humbling because I'm not very good at compliments. If people, they start, oh wow, I get a bit embarrassed about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Same.
I find that a bit uncomfortable, but absolutely over the moon.
Yeah.
The first time I was invited over, it was.
Well, and the fact too that it still amazes me that it was the first time I've been to the States. Proper States. And just like hearing about something and then seeing it, like we were saying, it's just like, well, that's a lot different than I thought. That's not Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
It's not Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
I had a bad impression of Americans when I was thatching back in the late 80s, early 90s. I'd be working in a small village somewhere, and it was quite a touristy area, and you'd have the Americans turn up big and brash, and as you say, wearing all these weird like golfing clothes
and everything.
Hi, and you'd be turned around and they're up on the scaffold. There's a place called Lavenham in Suffolk, and it's a beautiful old village. All the houses are around 1450, 1500, and I know people that live there, and they'd be eating their dinner, and suddenly the letterbox would go. You have letterbox on the front door.
Yeah. For mail drop.
Yeah.
Mail drop. Yeah.
And there'd be a camera lens. And there'd be American with his camera.
What?
Yeah.
I apologize for all.
So I had the wrong impression of what to expect when I came over, and you're pretty much the same with us. You might be a little bit louder, a little bit more, but other than that, we're the same.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh wow.
But I quite often I'd be working up at height and turn around and there was someone up on the scaffold.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. What are you doing? Really?
It was funny.
Oh man. Was it?
I know we used to wind them up as well. We used to pretend that we were employed by the government. It was we weren't really keeping the water out. It was it's all a bit pretend. Either that or we had tarpaulins underneath to keep the water out. We used to pull their legs,
That is funny. What? Oh man, so many questions come to mind just as a tourist, because being a tourist in other countries, but also realizing I'm representing my country, I don't act like an American, And I have a Japanese friend. When I met him in my 20s, he's like, I have a stereotype of Americans. I'm like, I figure. I mean, we have all stereotypes of all countries. Like, what's yours? He's like, usually it's a big blonde buff guy in a tank top and short shorts and flip flops. For some reason, carrying a boombox and going, yeah, brother, yeah, America. I was like, I don't know anyone that does that. He's going to college at Eugene and the University of Oregon. He's like, yeah, I realize that's wrong. I was like, yeah? He's like,
yeah, very wrong.
I can only imagine being, as another English-speaking country, being like, oh, that's what? So when you said the 80s, I was like, oh, was it Reagan in politics? The big whole thing. But tourists, by far, would probably be a thorn in the side of most. Did they try to help you? Like thatching?
No. Sometimes they'd ask, can I have a go? I would let them.
What would they say afterwards?
Huh?
What would they say? Like, that's really hard? Or, oh, I cut myself.
No, they'd thank us, and yes. Yeah, it was interesting, but I was just completely wrong when I came over. You know,
I'm glad
I
we've done
expected
better.
guns going off. You know, everyone's carrying. You know,
Oh, Texas, maybe.
well, yeah, maybe, but yeah, completely wrong about the people.
Mm.
But it's funny how you build these things up in your head and
TV, right?
Yeah,
Movies.
yeah.
The worst. Some of the best are the worst things.
Yeah.
With you were spending time in the Catskills, right? Was that where you were at
Yeah.
fishing and whatnot?
Yeah.
I've yet to go up there. What's it like there? Is it pretty? I heard it's a lot of deciduous forest up there.
Yeah. I think there are some pine areas.
Maybe the eastern white pine or whatnot.
Yeah, and
Probably
pitch.
pine.
Pitch. Yeah.
Bobwhite maybe.
Yeah, a lot of is it sugar maples and
Oh yeah.
you know, but stunning, absolutely beautiful.
Is it as in this part of the country? There's a lot of deciduous forests. How or in what ways are they similar and or different than similar forests in the UK?
They seem to look. They look. Well, I mean, we have a variety of different. We have a lot of forestry commission land where the trees were planted for timber, you know, as well as a more natural. We don't have a huge amount of. I think in the UK we're about 5% wood.
Okay.
Forest.
Okay.
You know, because of 65 probably heading towards 70 million people.
Oh wow.
We haven't got a lot of space for
It's
trees, you know. So there's little pockets as opposed to vast areas like you have.
Right.
Now, Scotland is slightly different, and Wales has large forested areas. Possibly because of the terrain is just too difficult to build on.
Mountains and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
you know, we don't have the massive forest that you have over here.
Yeah, because in my experience, you know, like
The trees look a lot younger. You know, they're not huge, big, fat trunks, are they? They're quite
long, tall.
slender forest trees.
That's what it was interesting to me. For one, seeing forests that were just majority was deciduous, being temperate forests in Oregon, Pacific Northwest, where I grew up. You know, on the coast, you have all this completely different ecology.
Yeah.
Right. Also, we're 33% forested for America. Okay, 33% forest in America.
Yeah. It's
Wow,
a big,
that's significantly
big difference.
different.
Yeah.
Wow, 5%. But given the landmass of space you guys have, very dense. You know, maybe London. I mean, no, I couldn't do London for long.
No, but there's 9 million just in London alone. 9 million people.
Wow. I told you I was supposed to go visit there when I was 20, 18, 19, but didn't. Probably would have had a panic attack.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
a lot of people.
That's busy.
That's too much.
Yeah.
Like, do you find yourself when you're traveling liking bigger cities, or do you just still like to stay out and?
No, I much preferred the countryside or the smaller towns. I'm not a city person, never have been. I was born in London. Spent first 12 years in London. My mum and dad got divorced, and my mum had family up in Suffolk.
Right.
So it was straight out. Absolutely loved it. You know, outside we have common land in the UK, which is it's like communal land where people would keep their cattle and stuff.
Okay.
So it's a small town I lived in, Sudbury, in Suffolk, and 2 minutes walk I was across on a floodplain common land and lots of rivers, and so I'd spend most of my time fishing. You know.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Probably see
walking the dog and fishing.
Let's say all the old trees the cattle have been grazing on too, right?
Not so much. It was more grassland, floodplain land, so it's just grass really, and there'd be willow trees along the banks of the river. But yeah, I'd spend all day in the summer holidays when I was off school. I'd be out there every day.
That sounds amazing. You know, willow. Speaking of willows, willow's a tree I've thought about trying to do with bonsai? Have you had much experience with willow?
Yeah,
or
I
carving,
know
or-
one guy in the UK that's had great success with them, but most people
Pretty finicky.
suffer with dieback, a lot of
That's it.
dieback. But he seems to have got a handle on it, and he had one. He showed a weeping willow at the trophy. A guy called Simon Temblett. If you Google his name, you'll see a lovely example of a weeping willow.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to figure it out. Because I know they're what I call a zombie tree. My landlord, when I moved to my place here, Columbus, he's like, "Oh, this tree's kind of dead, kind of alive," and it was a weeping willow. He's like, "I was gonna do it in landscape, but I realized I shouldn't because the roof will run
Yeah,
and screw my yard, my house." I'm like, smart. And I just watered it. And they said it was completely dead.
yeah,
And I was like, well, you give fish water, it will find more water, right?
yeah,
In that theory. And sure enough, it was here, and now, 2 years later, it's 3 feet tall.
yeah.
Just stringy as hell. But I was like, what do I do with it?
I think he got round the dieback with he'd have like a bucket of weak feed
Okay.
up above, and he'd have like a drip. Is it like a drip mat? It's like a
Drip
capilla-
line or-
capilla-
oh,
capillary matting,
Okay.
and that would go down into the pot. So it was constantly wet, but not sitting wet, not like sitting in a tray of water.
Right.
And yeah, a beautiful example. But I've tried, the corkscrew willow, and I've tried.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy to strike from cuttings, but it's that dieback thing.
Right.
You put a lot of work in, and the whole bloody branch will die.
Wow.
Yeah, frustrating.
Proper UK.
So I tend to stick to the easier species, really.
Which are.
Everything else.
Okay.
We've got about 35 native trees in the UK.
Mostly deciduous or conifer
Yeah,
as well?
we have the Scots pine, taxus, and common juniper are the three conifers we have.
I love a good Scots
Although
pine.
taxus is not really a conifer.
Mm.
And yeah, the rest is broadleaf deciduous.
Nice.
But hawthorn, blackthorn, Prunus spinosa, and crataegus are probably the most popular of the deciduous ones because they have small leaves and work well as bonsai.
Yeah, ramified.
Quercus, we have some good examples of oaks, but I think you need a lot more experience to work on those types of trees. They're not quite so easy. Fleshy roots that can freeze in the winter. Big leaves.
Yeah.
We've got beech, hornbeam. The same things you have. I don't think we have you have some big leaf problems over here.
We have the American beech.
Yeah,
And,
and, even your hornbeam is quite a large leaf compared to ours, the European species. But yeah, there's quite a number of usable species in the UK.
Are you guys finding that you're having a lot of problems with blight and mopses
Yeah.
and everything?
Yeah. Our ash trees are dying off in large numbers. There's an airborne fungus that's it's called ash dieback. And basically, it just weakens and weakens and weakens the tree, and they're all dying. And the ash is probably the predominant tree of the wood. So
okay.
it's a big loss. It's a big loss.
It's like out here we had the ash borer. Yeah, it decimated the whole country.
But there are lots of there's bleeding canker in oak. There's a lot of things that we're up against now.
Right.
It's funny. I was talking to Mark Nolanders. I was doing a workshop with him in Germany, and he was saying that he reckons it'll get to the point where we'll probably have 4 or 5 species per country that we can use as bonsai, and the rest will be, don't use that because of the disease, pests and diseases.
Right. The whole isolation container. Yeesh. That's
yeah. it just seems it gets worse and worse. You know, we seem to be more and more diseases.
Do you think that's through importing, exporting, or just human?
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the UK, because we've left Europe now, is going to be a lot tighter on trees being moved across the border. So maybe that will help a bit, but you know, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. With, you know, not to get political, but with the Brexit, do you think that'll affect the bonsai scene? As far as, like, is it not with necessarily trees, but just like knowledge?
Because of COVID hitting straight after Brexit, there's still a lot of stuff to be ironed out as yet. Whether, you know, the UK has always been quite a large proportion of UK trees go over to the trophy, which used to be the No-Landers trophy.
Right.
I'm hoping that we'll still be able to show in Europe.
Right.
But you know, you need passports for the trees and phytosanitary certificates and all that kind of stuff to be able to move stuff.
Trees into California.
Yeah.
That's really hard. A lot of money too.
Yeah.
And if someone's having a bad day on the checkpoint.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't come in.
Yeah.
Eesh. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so it's early days as far as the customs sorting out that side of things.
Right, so it's a grey area right now.
Yeah.
That sucks.
And the taxes on imports is all changed as well. So importing and exporting. So there's you know, it's going to take a little while to sort it all out.
With importing trees there, before Brexit or even now, was there a quarantine area? Because I know here that's one of the main reasons why people don't import trees anymore.
If it was from Europe, it's all counted as one area, so you don't have to quarantine.
Okay.
But Japanese, anything outside of Europe should go through quarantine.
Are you all getting any American trees over there? There's like Rocky Mountains, junipers, or anything?
I don't think there's anyone importing from America.
I wonder if it would survive out there. Anyways, it's probably too damp, maybe. In the arid environment where some of those.
I don't think Rocky Mountain junipers would do very well. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure. I think Walter Paul had some Rocky Mountain junipers over in Germany. So, and I think they did quite well.
Okay.
So, maybe.
See what
but,
happens.
you know, we've got enough to play with. We've got some good stuff to play with.
You got a lot of history, too.
Yeah.
more churches to look at on that, too. One last question. You know, it's getting dark out here. Now you got to get some sleep, too. Been on a hustle and bustle all week and all month. What is one thing that you want to be remembered for in life? Whether it be in bonsai or just with your engagement? That's a hard question.
Yeah. I'd like to be known long term for my carving and being inspirational. Maybe. I'd like to think that I inspired someone else to go on and take what I do further.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'd like.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where can we find more about you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'm not all over social media. I tend to use Facebook and a limited amount of stuff on Instagram. But I have my Will Baddeley page on Facebook, and I have my Wildwood Bonsai, which is more the work side of it, on Facebook.
Okay. Cool. Well, I thank you for your time today.
No,
Trying to push you on the spot, but
that's all right.
Figured just get some
okay.
good stories going. And
That's good.
Rob, thank you for hosting as always. And Bonsai on.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. Today's episode has been recorded, produced, and edited by Kevin Ferris and Ryan Houston. Our music was provided by MIDI Cancer. To find more music from MIDI Cancer, check out their SoundCloud and Bandcamp pages. To find more information on the podcast, please check out our Instagram page, Bonsai Time Podcast, and our website, bonsaitimepodcast.com. To stay in touch with us, Kevin's Instagram is Kevin_Ferris, PNW, and Ryan's website is right2tree2.com. can find these links in the description below. Thank you for listening, and bonsai on!